I've started to think about the process of creation, I guess, slightly differently. So in machine learning, we have this saying, garbage in, garbage out, meaning if you don't spend the time to kind of think about the training data that you have, it doesn't matter how good the algorithm is, it doesn't matter what kind of model you use, you're going to get garbage out. And I have really felt that in the past couple of, I would say, years, because I noticed a lot of stuff that I was writing, music-wise, was going in circles and all just staying in the same neighborhood. There was no diversity. I didn't feel like I was being that creative. And I noticed that I just hadn't been listening to that much new music, or I wasn't being intentional with how I listened to new music. And that was kind of like this little like wake up call that like, no, dude, you have to be really intentional about how much new stuff you're exposing yourself to, because you should just listen to new cool stuff. And two, if you want to get good stuff out, you got to put good stuff in. So yeah, that's just like an example of like how if you know certain things in kind of the machine learning domain, you can be like, wait, this definitely applies to my brain too.
Welcome everybody to the
Faking Notes podcast. We are actually not humans recording this intro. We are complex AI created by machine learning frameworks, and we've been given data from this interview to constitute this intro. You're probably not going to understand any of what I just said.
Beep, beep, boop, boop, boop.
Beep, boop, bop, until you listen to this episode. But we have on the podcast Pedram, who is an incredible mind. He's an AI specialist in machine learning at Google. He's worked at Microsoft, and he's also a musician. And we get into a really complex conversation about, what AI is, where it's going, and I think it's one of our most powerful conversations we've ever had.
It really is a conversation about the future. I mean, this is such new stuff, and it's even hard to define. We don't really even know how to necessarily define like what AI and machine learning even is, and yet it's going to have massive impacts. Another fun thing is we talk about what can we ourselves learn from it. Isn't that ironic? Like we're teaching machines how to learn, and then now we watch the machine learn, and then we learn ourselves how to learn. It's wild. So we get to see not only how these principles will affect us from a technical perspective in our lives, but also what we as artists can do to learn from machine learning. So Pedram is an awesome guest. We're excited to be bringing out guests who have these wild backgrounds and seeing like how does it relate to music, and bringing them in there to really hone in deeply on these types of things. So we're trying out some new formats here. We're gonna before introducing him and playing the full interview, we're gonna kind of like dig in and kind of give you a little bit of an assessment, a beautiful little prelude to the interview. And so we hope you enjoy it. If you're liking it, give us feedback. And the best way to give us feedback
is by
5 stars. It's 5 stars only. You give us a rating, 5 stars. That's all we accept here at the Faking Notes podcast. If you'd like to speak to us in between the episodes, join our Discord. Hang out with us. Talk.
Baby. It's been growing.
It's growing.
And I love seeing y'all talking to each other. Y'all are consoling each other for these college audition season. Although it's drawn to a close, I know decisions are coming out soon. So come through and let us know if you got into school or what you're doing this summer. Like, we want to know.
And of course, we've got YouTube, we've got TikTok, we've got Instagram. We take your money on Patreon. We're everywhere now. We're ubiquitous. We're kind of like the AI of podcasts, of music podcasts.
Heck yeah.
But without further ado, let's get into this episode.
Let's hop into it. So Trevor, let's set a basis of ground rules, right? Like, what exactly, in the most plain English you can, is artificial intelligence?
Going back to some of the creators of artificial intelligence, it's essentially answering the question, can a machine think?
Mm-hmm.
And Like that's it. It's artificial. It's not us, but can
Mm,
it show intelligence? And something we of
mm,
course talk about in this episode. Pedram does a great job of kind of laying out that foundation that we
mm,
can't even really define intelligence.
mm.
I mean, you've heard my jokes. Like, who knows? There's not much
Is there
intelligence there. Like,
intelligence there?
like I'm living and breathing, but like it's hard to know if there's any intelligence going on.
You don't give yourself enough credit, bro. But essentially, intelligence is just the ability to tackle problems that an organism has never seen before, think through them, and come up with solutions. That's generally the most baseline, non-philosophical definition of intelligence.
So for instance, when we normally think about computers, you're thinking about binaries, zeros and ones, databases. It can spit out an answer in a calculator because we've taught it the rules and the parameters of here's
Mhm,
math. Here's how you do it. Here's pluses and minus. Take this data we give it, and then give me an answer. It can do that way quicker than humans can. And we've had that for quite some time. Your phone is amazing at this.
mhm,
But what is AI and what is machine learning is what Drew was saying is simply being able to assess things that it might not have the data for. It might not have seen that scenario. It might not have a zero or a one, a true or a false in that exact
mhm,
scenario. And that's
mhm.
something that humans are okay at.
We're pretty
Like,
we're pretty good at that,
yeah,
especially
we
from
could,
a very young age.
yeah, we could do it. Are we the best? No, we eat that mushroom, we die. I see that person ate that mushroom. I don't eat that mushroom. Like, yeah,
Exactly.
like,
It's pretty
like,
simple, but a computer
yeah,
won't draw that
it'll eat the
conclusion. It'll
mushroom.
be like it'll eat the mushroom every time. So they're not going to procreate. What's really interesting though, and what I think a lot of people don't understand is that artificial intelligence is like a broad sort of stroke philosophical understanding of what's going on. But machine learning is more of a framework, it's more of a concrete method to achieve artificial intelligence. And so, what machine learning is essentially uh, it allows machines to develop algorithms that take data, look at the data, and either learn from the data to create predictive models or create some sort of outcome or predict a certain outcome. A great example of machine learning is like when you're typing into Google and it auto completes what you're thinking about. And it does this because of all the different inputs that people have put into the search engine before you, and then it kind of predicts what you're going to ask before you ask it, which is kind of cool. It's a cool use case. But that is just one of the like infinite use cases machine learning can create.
And so we're of course going to get into how this directly impacts music. There's
Mm-hmm.
going to be lots of like in-depth discussions about this within the interview, but Spotify does this. When it's serving you up music, you might like this.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, we think you're going to like this particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's
YouTube.
learning from you. YouTube, it's everywhere now.
Mm-hmm.
Google Maps, it's well, you've searched for this in the past. You started typing the three letters, it auto completes. It's kind of just learning
Oh shit,
how
you
to
like
better serve you.
boba?
Yeah,
You need to check out this spot around the corner.
and
Yeah.
there's so many things that it will improve our lives.
Mm.
But of course, there are a lot of dangers. So we do dig into that. We don't spend much time. This is mostly a like nice positive impact on your life in a good way. But we do kind of discuss the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Terminator, Matrix is this beautiful thing that's gonna tell me my music taste also going to murder me in my sleep? Time will tell.
Wait, wait a second. So are you telling me that James Cameron back in 1984 was right? Is Terminator based on a true story? Like
Mm.
in the
Next,
future?
next thing you're gonna tell me the Titanic was based on a true story.
I mean, what is time really?
Right?
What is time really? Everything that has ever happened and
Yeah.
will ever happen has already happened. We're just
Wait.
moving in a one-way direction down the river of the
Yeah.
fourth dimension.
So are you also telling me that James Cameron went back to the future? Like he took a DeLorean and went back to the future and
Who knows?
wrote about it?
Who knows?
Oh my God.
Possibly. You know,
Possibly.
well, let me tell you something though, y'all. Like, I have a firm belief that we can develop, and this is the perpetual optimist in me. Yes, power is neither good nor bad, right? Power, the result of it is incumbent upon those that wield it. So if we choose as humans to become more compassionate, more empathic, and better stewards of each other, whatever technology we develop can only have a positive impact on us. We just have to make sure that we come from a place of integrity. You know what I mean? And I'm all for it. I just don't want no machine taking my job. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying. All bets are off then.
Obviously, a great example that is unfortunately very relevant to the current times: nuclear energy.
Mm-hmm.
The same exact elements that we are dealing with that could provide us with unlimited power, an energy free society or energy fueled society is also the same thing that could kill us all. And I think AI, to some degree, blockchain, machine learning, it's in a similar boat. It's really important that we approach this with caution, that we can approach this with logic and empathy, because it can save humanity, it could destroy humanity, and it's on us to see how to implement that. What's of course unique about AI and machine learning is like nukes can't, they're not creating themselves. They're confined by parameters. This is very unique in the history of forever, in that we're not quite sure when it gets to a certain level what it can teach itself. And that's where you get into all the dystopian movies, is like what happens when you start getting Will Smith, rest in peace, iRobot. Like what happens when the machines, like can program themselves and create themselves?
And they're not human, so they don't have to sleep.
Yeah.
They can also read infinitely fast. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have some real three-dimensional meat bag limitations on us. We have psychology. We get sad and depressed and unmotivated. But a machine is just like, yo, again.
Yeah,
Let me run a
another
million
one.
simulations in a minute, right? So we do have to make sure that our barometers are set to integrity. Stunners or phasers are set to stun. You know what I mean? That's an old Star Trek joke
That's
for
good.
the Zoomers out there. But anyway, Trevor, do you think there's anything else we need, any other groundwork we need to lay out before we jump into this conversation with Pedram Pejman?
I don't think there's any more groundwork. I think this interview, it's fascinating. It does a great job of really honing in and focusing on laying the groundwork at a fundamental level and then slowly scaling up into level 5 bonkers dumb. In some way, it feels almost like machine learning, in that we keep putting in more data and the conversation itself grows and kind of learns its own intelligence. But I think you're going to love this one. We're excited to bring you more interviews like this that are really focused in having people who are artists themselves, but with really unique backgrounds. I'm excited about the future, and I'm excited for you to listen to this episode.
So without further ado, let's welcome our next guest,
Pedram.
What's good, everybody? We just wanted to open the show up and welcome you here, Pedram. You are a machine learning expert at Google, and you're a musician too. So it's what we love here at the Faking Notes podcast, and what we like to highlight for the Faking fam is like how you don't have to just go straight into the music path to find interesting ways to build a career, right? And you can have multiple different interests, and there are so many ways that you can marry music with other disciplines in this life. And so we're just so excited to bring you on have a cool conversation, and ask some questions as we weave a narrative of like, figuring out what does like machine learning do for the music world, where is it going, and like how you incorporate it in your life. But I guess we'll just start off with a simple question. What is AI and machine learning, and like why does it matter for musicians?
Super simple question.
Yeah.
What's going on? Yeah. Super pumped to be on a podcast. Thank you for having me. And first of all, first thing that you said about, in this day and age, your career can mean so many different things. Like, what even is a singular career? Does that even exist?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we'll get into it. But to your question, what is AI? What is machine learning? Yeah, it's a deceptively difficult question to answer. I spent 4 years or 3 years kind of doing my thesis on what is intelligence, not even AI, but it turns out we don't know. We don't like have a good definition for it. But for like a practical working understanding, I guess you can think of as intelligence as this ability that humans seem to have to be able to adapt to new environments, solve problems and challenges that they haven't faced before. And we kind of call that intelligence. And that presents itself obviously like in a variety of ways for different humans in different contexts. But that's kind of the main, if you gotta unravel the or peel the onion layers back, what you get at the heart of it is the fact that we think that we are these things that can thrive in any context, even if they've never seen it before, even if they've never faced the challenges before, they can figure out sort of problem solve their way through it. And we call that intelligence. And AI is kind of the study of trying to recreate that in machines, because we have been able to program machines to do all sorts of things, but they don't seem to behave similar to humans in this regard, whereby like they can only do, historically they've only been able to do things that we explicitly program them to do. They can't adapt to new environments and solve challenges that they've never seen before. So we kind of call that AI as a discipline. And I guess to the second part of the question was, what is machine learning? So AI has been going on. It's been a study or a field that's been going on for up to a century or half a century, depending on how you count. And for the most part, it was not very successful, with just like people theorizing things and like, no real practical applications. What has happened in the past 2 decades ish, which is, or maybe a decade, again, depending on how you count, is this new approach to creating AI called machine learning, whereby instead of trying to teach machines kind of how to exhibit intelligence, how to behave intelligently, what we do is we just give them examples of, here's what intelligent behavior looks like, here's what we think the right answer to this task should be, and figure out, use statistics to figure out the reasoning paths that you would have to have in order to solve that problem in that way. And that's been super effective in the past decade or so. And there have been a lot of kind of different variants, different versions of how we do machine learning. And one kind of cool aspect of it is that one of the most common approaches in machine learning is called neural networks, which is based on, or artificial neural networks, which is based on loosely on how biological neural networks, what we think is implementing the machinery to intelligence in our heads. They're kind of, loosely based off of each other, or not off of each other. The artificial ones are based off of the biological ones. So we have some like validation that, hey, this is kind of how nature did it for us. So this seems like a promising route to kind of recreate this in machines.
That's so mind blowing.
Yeah.
I want to say, like, because I'm a little bit of a hippie, it's like, yo, Mother Nature has had billions of years to kind of just like try shit. And so, like, if it works organically in the natural world, it probably is one of the better frameworks. And so it's interesting that we're starting to reflect, the natural world and neural networks and try. And we don't really understand our brains, but do you find that, like, maybe as we're trying to develop this intelligence in machines, that we're learning more about ourselves at the same time?
Oh yeah, I think I mean big, huge, yeah. But um, there are a lot of researchers that I work with that first and foremost have a formal background in psychology, not psychology, usually neuroscience or some field that studies the human brain in some capacity. So some of them have formal trainings, and so they kind of need that in order to do their jobs. But even those who don't, definitely there is this kind of notion of looking at how machines learn. The learning algorithms that we have today are very, very rudimentary compared to what, as you alluded to, nature has has had billions of years to arrive at. But still, it's really cool when one of my coworkers has like a newborn or something. The lens through which they see their newborn acquiring skills and like learning intelligence is very much shaped by the work that they do in kind of the computer lab, and it works. Like the parallels really work. You can kind of once you understand how kind of we're trying to engineer intelligence, you start to see parallels in how your newborn is acquiring skills and kind of learning how to be a human. And so yeah, 100%.
Wow. It's really mind blowing. And it's so cool to have you on here because AI and machine learning, as you probably agree, like that term gets now like thrown out all the time. It's like the organic,
Sure.
you got to buy
Yeah.
organic. And
Oh
then, but
yes.
they put it on every label. And it's like, is this really AI or do
AI
you just have,
yogurt.
yeah, like, is this really AI or do you just have like a really nice Google sheet,
Yeah,
but
exactly. I mean, yeah.
it's the new frontier, and so it's fascinating how they can kind of see these parallels like through the lens of machine learning and young little humans. So I'm
Yeah.
curious for you as a creator of music, as an artist, what is it like looking at the lens of the creation of music or learning how to create music? Like, does that filter in? Do you see some of these other rudimentary type things creeping up in your practice?
It's funny because I mean, yes. Short answer is yes. But there are a number of ways that it kind of creeps in. First and foremost, um, I have one brain, right? Like I am one person, and so when I
Speak
spent
for
like
yourself,
8 hours,
brother.
Yeah.
Speak for yourself. I'm just kidding.
okay, I am a mere one brain human, and yeah, when I spend like 8-10 hours doing something, and then I just shift from my desk to my piano, and then I'm doing the next thing. It's not like I got a clean break and now I have a different brain, and like all the stuff that I just did doesn't affect. They definitely affect you, right? The things that you learn, the approaches that you learn, the ways of looking at things that you learn. I don't think you can compartmentalize. No matter how hard you try. Maybe some people are really good at it. I'm not. So it definitely creeps in. It creeps in a number of ways. One, I would say, I mean, at a technical level, I think if you study music theory and you kind of have a technical understanding of this is why this piece sounds good, or even if you're composing or improving, you're not getting lost in it, but rather maybe you're thinking about the actual technical transitions of like, okay, I'm here. Functional harmony, and you're trying to figure out how to end this phrase, and you're thinking about it that way, then yeah, you are 100%. I mean, that definitely kind of creeps in because there are sort of tools in your technical toolbox in machine learning that definitely apply when you are looking at music from a technical standpoint, just because at the end of the day, they both boil down to math. And like if you know certain things about discrete math in one domain, you can apply it to another one.
Mhm.
But putting that aside, looking at it from a slightly higher level, I would say the process of creation, you start to think about it, or I've started to think about the process of creation, I guess, slightly differently. Let me be specific. So in machine learning, we have this saying, like I said, so in machine learning, you have your kind of learning algorithm and training procedure and stuff. But the main important thing is the data that comes in. So the data that comes in goes through the training algorithm and then pops out sort of a trained model that knows how to do that task. So if you want kind of, say the task is translation from English to French, you're going to have a huge corpus of English to French translated sentences and words and stuff like that. You put that into the training procedure, and out pops a model that knows how to do that task. And that we have this saying that goes, garbage in, garbage out, meaning if you don't take care of if you don't spend the time to kind of think about the training data that you have, it doesn't matter how good the algorithm is. It doesn't matter what kind of model you use. You're going to get garbage out. And I have really felt that in the past couple of, I would say, years, because I noticed that I was kind of, this is around 2020, I would say, a lot of stuff that I was writing, music wise, was kind of just going in circles and all just staying in the same neighborhood. There was no diversity. I didn't feel like I was being that creative. I thought I was, okay, I just wrote this and it sounds like the stuff that I wrote 2 months ago. And I noticed that I just hadn't been listening to that much new music, or I wasn't being intentional with how I listened to new music. And so that was kind of like this little like wake up call that, like, no, dude, you have to be really intentional about how much new stuff you're exposing yourself to, because one, you should just listen to new cool stuff, and two, if you want to get good stuff out, you got to put good stuff in. And so yeah, that's just like an example of like how, a very specific example of how, if you know certain things in kind of the machine learning domain, you can be like, wait, this I definitely applies to my brain too.
That is so huge. Good stuff in, good stuff out. You know, they say when you're learning like jazz and things like that, you have to learn. You want to learn from albums that you really love.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really crazy is like, you know, everybody's taste is different. Like there are people that love country, but I don't love country.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are people that want to, because they've been exposed to it. One thing about humans, right, and correct me if I'm wrong, like repetition allows us to like things more.
Oh yeah.
So you can engineer your music where like a lot of pop music, it repeats. It's the same 4 chords. And so that is familiar to us. And that's why we tend to like it more often. And like the whole structure of like verse, chorus, verse, that's kind of different for interest, and then chorus again that's the same as the first one, maybe a little extra. Like that formula, that addiction formula, is actually baked in. Is there any math behind that, or am I off base? Like,
oh no, man. I don't know if this. So there's probably research done on this that I just haven't looked at, but I have this kind of intuition that exactly as you said, repetition in and of itself, it doesn't matter what it is that you're repeating. Repetition will make you like the thing. So I like the way I formulated it in my head is like, regardless of what song. So give me a person and give me a song. It doesn't, like, they could be you and you could hate, I don't know, classical country music, and give me the most country song. And I will find the number of times that you have to listen to this thing in order to like it. That number exists. And I have like, this is one of those things that I can't prove, but it's one of those things that I firmly believe, just because I do think for any given song, there's a way that you're going to like it. There is a way that your brain is going to like figure out what it is that makes the song kind of go, and it'll latch onto it, and then it'll kind of want to hear it more. And it's just that for most people, that number is 1. Like if they listen to a song and they don't like it the first time, they're not going to listen to it again. And I think the luxury that a lot of artists that have proved themselves, quote unquote, have is that number is higher for most of their listeners, right? Like you listen to the first something that they drop the first time, you're like, I don't know how to feel about this. Second time and third time and the fourth time, you're like, damn, all right, okay, I get it. Yep, this is a banger. And there's, I guess, like that's kind of the artist aspect of it, but there is the genre dimension of it, whereby like pop music, or a lot of music that's traditionally kind of simpler from like a I don't know, melodic and harmonic vocabulary perspective, yeah, they require fewer listens in order to kind of for your brain to catch what is the structure of it, what it is that kind of makes it a song, that makes it make sense, quote unquote. And so generally they're easier for your brain to kind of like latch onto, whereas there are I mean, like in jazz or classical music, there's stuff that you have to sit there for 22 minutes, and there's no way you're going to like actually memorize the 22 minutes to be able to kind of figure out what the structure is. So you got to do it a couple times, really pay attention. But then once you get it, there's obviously more complexity, there's more perplexity, there's more just density of stuff going on. And so, which is why a lot of people who listen to jazz and classical music, they can be kind of snobby and be like, well, this is just better music, isn't it? It's more complex for sure. Like you can like technically define complexity and be like that this is definitely more complex, there's more density in this. But yeah, I guess this is where I go, to each their own. Like if you don't like listening to music as a thing to be intentional about, then yeah, you kind of want to listen to something and be like, yeah, my brain got it, I like it, I'm gonna throw it on repeat while I run laps. But if you kind of want to appreciate music, for the thing itself, then yeah, for sure.
And I mean, that brings up so many interesting talking points, but like to how this really relates back to elements of machine learning. It's how we wind up with genres, is that there's similarity and a lot of similar components, and that if you're likely to enjoy something in a genre, you're likely to enjoy something that falls in that category. And to some degree, how do we even determine a genre? It's a categorization of elements, of like different types of perceivable elements, like across the whole spectrum. And that there's some things that we just naturally can be drawn towards: rhythm, repetition, melodic, harmonic, any tone, words, history, anything. But we've had 5/1s chords or 2/5/1s for forever, and it appears in so many, almost a majority of the genres we're exposed to, and yet they're all so different. It's such a simple little structure, but yet there are still many great songs to be written in 2/5/1. There are still many great songs to be written in C major. It's the creativity of how you can go and approach these that changes. But I think one neat, just for like listeners to kind of wrap their brain around like machine learning for music, just off of a brief Google, like one of the immediate impacts of machine learning on music would be these. Let me see what it's called. Um, Music information retrieval, aka how does Spotify know what genre and when to serve you something? It's using machine learning. It listens to 1,000 of these. What are some of the characteristics? When it gets hit with the new audio of something else, it can kind of determine, does it fall into this genre? And then it can recommend it to you. It's using machine learning on you. It's figuring out this person listened longer to this genre. They skipped this. They didn't like this. And it's just slowly taking more of that data in order to better serve you more music, which in turn helps the company by keeping you on the platform and you paying that subscription fee. And it also helps you out too. It's like nice and mutual. You're getting served music you're more likely to like. So like there's just like a direct example of how
Yeah.
machine learning impacts music.
Oh yeah. I mean, okay. So yeah, I guess let's get into the ML for music section. But it's just crazy because I wasn't even thinking really about information retrieval. So I guess to kind of take a step back, when you are thinking about, okay, how does ML specifically as kind of a technique affect the music industry or music creation, there is like, I'd say 3 levels. The highest level would be your personalization that Spotify does, the discover weekly type features where they're not actually looking at the content of the song, they're just trying to understand the interactions between they're just looking at the metadata, right? They're like, this person listened to this song and this person listened to that song, here's your taste profile. And there's some very, very, very incredible machine learning going on behind the scenes. The Spotify is really good about actually kind of detailing the technical stuff in their engineering blog. But yeah, it's kind of working off of metadata. And then the second level would be algorithms or machine learning algorithms that look at the content of the audio, right? They actually look at the song audio. And that's where the MIR comes into play. And it's fascinating. It has not been something that has been getting a ton of attention, I would say, in the past few years, though it probably will. It probably has started this year and will, or in 2021 it started, and then going forward it will, just because it's really, really difficult and both algorithmically and also like from a resource, like compute resource perspective, it's really difficult to run experiments that work in audio space and that work with the waveforms of these songs, just because, again, it's just really resource intensive. And so there just hasn't been a ton of research. There are a few really good conferences, but there just aren't that many labs that have the money to spend on this. But with Spotify and a few other kind of big tech companies that have the money to spend on this and have the right talent to kind of throw at this, and now there's like a business viability for having these kinds of products. Now all of a sudden it's getting a lot more attention. And I do think we are seeing a few kind of examples of the first generation of products or rather features that are based on, hey, I have, like, my machines have the ability to actually see what's inside this audio file, right? For like music creators, there's the excellent XO, I guess, not even drum rack, drum sample organizer that uses machine learning to kind of figure out what's inside the sound and how is it kind of related to other sounds in your library. There's the Spotify, and there's Splice has the same thing. Spotify does this for kind of a consumer listener audience. And so you're going to see more and more of these where machines are kind of able to reason about the content of the audio. But it's still going to be very coarse. Like, we are not at the level where machines can really kind of have a similar experience and kind of understand the semantics of the audio that they're hearing. They're just going to be able to kind of infer these technical attributes of the song. Like, they're going to be able to figure out where the onsets are and figure out where the transients are and be able to classify the transients and be able to like figure out the tempo, figure out the timbre of various instrumentation involved. And from that, make inferences on what this song is. They're not going to be able to directly be able to say, well, this sounds really dark and moody, and I feel like from this other dark and moody song that you listen to that has this kind of lyrics about a breakup, I think you're going to like it. Like that, we're not there yet. But yeah, that's kind of like the second level. It's the information retrieval, looking at being able to see the audio file and making sort of inferences based on that. And then the third one, which for some odd reason, not odd reason, it's the one that I like the most passionate about or like interested in, even though I don't actually work in it, is kind of doing machine learning at the token level. Meaning, like if you were to figure out how to break down the musical grammar, the grammars that we have by which we compose musical sentences, you can do machine learning on that, similar to how you do machine learning on text, right? Like the English language has a grammar, has an alphabet. You can find a similar alphabet for most musical notation systems. And then you can do machine learning on that. And that is where like the really cool stuff is going to come in, because you're going to have machines that can sort of understand why it is that a piece, that a transcribed piece that is sort of sounds better than a certain one. And then it's going to be able to sort of co-improv with you, duet with you, because it has like the actual basis of music theory encoded in it. And yeah, so I guess those are kind of like the three levels at which it's gonna or I mean, there are other ones. There are also like DDSP, for example, is the differentiable digital signal processing library, which I think is going to absolutely change the entire synthesis game in the next few years. And like a quick synopsis of that is essentially all the emulated synthesizers that have come out in the past 20-ish years, there's a bunch of components in them, like reverb and oscillators, LFOs,
Filters, yeah.
exactly. And so what DDSP does is it recreated all of those components, re-implemented all of them, but in a differentiable way. And all that means is that now we can do machine learning on those components. So now what that enables is for the entire synthesizer to be machine learnable or like trainable. What that means is you can take, say, the next Flume song that comes out, you're like, damn, that's awesome. What is that synthesizer? And you can just give it to the machine, and it can kind of learn, figure out what the initial parameters of the synthesizers were to create that, which is like, that is, mind blowing.
It would be great for education, but then like, you think you got your own unique sound that nobody else can replicate. And then, machine learning got you by your balls. Yo, I have a question though, for you around MIR. We're definitely jumping down the rabbit hole. Fakey fam, I hope you're hanging on tight.
I'm having a good time.
Hang on tight. Okay. So I'm wondering, do you see any application for MIR or music information retrieval? Do you see any application with that, with blockchain technology, when it comes to maybe copywriting or being able to identify specific language in songs and noticing when people are trying to maybe re-upload your music that you made? Or do you think this could have like any implication in like making sure that like people that make a song can have a definitive, metadata timestamp using blockchain technology that can prove that they made the song at a specific time using machine learning and taking the metadata and putting it on a blockchain?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, bingo. Like that is like, if you're listening to this and you have like, you're wondering what you should do with your time and you're interested in this stuff, like, go literally build that startup on some blockchain, and you will be very, very successful. Because it's like, there's
You
a
don't
couple like, there's a couple of components to this, right? There's one is having a shared source of truth. Like, anytime you want to have this kind of hey, I made it first claims that are enforceable, you need a shared source of truth for like making claims. And up until now, it's been copyright, and it's like really annoying, and most people don't want to deal with it, right? Unless you have a label that's got a legal team whose entire job is to do this stuff. Most people don't do it. So that, with some blockchains, that is kind of solved, and I think they'll get to a point where that is actually solved. Then there comes the sort of technical ability of fingerprinting and being able to say, okay, this audio, this little thing that I just wrote, some aspect of it is mine. It gets philosophical and like difficult to answer, because how do you determine what exactly it is? If I take that sound and like pitch it up and down or chop it up, is it still yours? I don't know. I would say that like the easiest answer to give is like, if you imported my sound into something or like recorded it, it's mine. Like I should get something. Maybe the whole output isn't mine, but like, you used one of my things. So I'm sure, again, that part of like the normative, like, what is mine, what is yours, how do we determine that is also going to get solved. And then the technical ability to fingerprint things, that's also, I think, solvable. And then once you have those pieces, you're like, okay, now we just need an ecosystem, which is really difficult. But I do think, because the incentives are aligned such that, like, if you are right now like a beat maker or like sound kit maker or loop kit maker, you essentially just like upload your shit to BeatStars or like, I don't know, one of the platforms, and just hope that people don't steal it, don't share it on Reddit. And like, that's basically it, right? If there was a place that was like, hey, come only upload it here, and we'll make sure that nobody else, uses this, because we embed these fingerprints, and then anyone else who tries to come on our platform using one of your sounds in their songs, like, we'll automatically just give you a royalty. It's not even like a slap on the wrist. It's like this is like built in, right?
Yeah,
That dude,
it's like automatic sample clearing.
Exactly. And I think there's this kind of preconceived notion that people are bad and they want to steal. And I feel like in at least my life, maybe I've just been fortunate to know mostly good people, but like people are good. Just doing the good thing is usually the harder thing to do, and people are lazy and they're just like, I'm just trying to get this song out.
As someone who's spent a lot of time like now having to like learn the legal side of things, of sheet music and arranging and rights clearance and putting, doing a cue sheet for a film and using this free sound versus that, I think that that's one of the key things. It's so difficult to go through the right way. You will get it wrong anyways, and that it doesn't match. Like I think about this with any type of regulation or system that's in place. If it's not working, you need to fix it. If it's not doing what it was intended to do, then you need to change it. And so anyone who's out there making music, even the biggest companies, if they want the like legal checked all the boxes way to go about either performing some arranging or to have this song in it, you're telling me that everyone out there who gets a call from a client and says, hey, can you do music for X? It's due next week, is going to say, hold on, I need to talk to 40 different lawyers to get clearance.
All going to tell me, no, don't do it.
Yeah. And they're gonna be like, hey, this phone call was more expensive than you're gonna get paid for the project.
Yep.
Like, it's never gonna happen. And so no one does it. So it's clearly a flawed system, because then everyone loses. Everyone winds up losing. And when they make it simple for you, you sell that sheet music, you sell that thing, they're giving away like 90%. You get nothing. So you're not incentivized. There's really no incentive to go through and do these things. But I think it's like an interesting little wormhole of where a good example of a machine learning or AI type system comes into play, because it is really hard. Like Drew and I've done a lot of research on this in the blockchain space, figuring out, was this a worthy avenue for us to pursue? And there were so many cons and very little pros that it didn't necessarily seem like a good first step, because just to prove that initial ownership is still hard to do on the blockchain. Why? Because you can create a sound, but how is that sound processed through the world? If someone compresses it, if someone does an EQ on it, if someone alters it,
exactly,
it can remove. You can get fancy. Some companies, when they're doing these at the high level, there is digital, like there is audio watermarking. If you put it in the metadata, that can be stripped and then it's gone. There are ways to try and watermark it, but if it's like, hey, we're going to hide a little bit of like some hidden audio Morse code way up in the frequency spectrum, all it takes is one EQ to remove all your money. So
low pass filter, GG.
Yeah, GG, all my money. Like they're like, haha, high pass, you lose. And then the moment that your sample is embedded in someone else's track, or there's speech dialogue over it, or a sound effect, it's really hard to do that type of identification, and definitely after transformation. So I think here is a great example of machine learning, because blockchain can be a big part of the solution, but on the identification part, you'd need so much information to identify this song is that song, because it can't just listen to the lyrics or just the drums. What if someone stems it out? It can't listen just for some EQ thing. Like, how does it figure it out? The machine. Like, if you're like this is where the machine learning comes in. If it's able to accurately predict without necessarily needing all of the information, if it's able to kind of culminate that this song is your song, and working on improving that, then you don't necessarily need 2 terabytes of information to identify that snare is yours. And that's kind of like the downside. And the hard part of blockchain is that you can't have 2 terabytes of information per song stored on there. Like, you lose at scale. So there's kind of this like almost like nice symbiotic relationship, it seems, that could come from having this machine learning to process it without having to store all that data, and then using the efficiencies and protections of blockchain to kind of manage the action being actionable on that learning.
Yeah, you're sort of getting into the complexities and difficulties of actually doing this in the real world. And yeah, you nailed like a lot of them, right? I think it will have to be a kind of a concerted move towards by not by the entire ecosystem, but a large part of the ecosystem towards kind of on chain or like in a certain chain solutions whereby like I as a sample maker, I'm putting my stuff and only using stuff from that ecosystem and putting my stuff in that ecosystem. And then the loop kit makers are taking from that ecosystem and putting back into the ecosystem. The beat makers are taking from the ecosystem back to the ecosystem. And the actual sort of artist and the end product also gets put back to the ecosystem. And there has to be some kind of like integration with the tools that you're using. Like imagine if you had a splice to Ableton or Logic integration so that if you're using something from a splice, it just like automatically goes. And then once you upload the end product onto whatever ecosystem that we're talking about, it kind of just gets tagged. And again, if you get a million streams off of it and you make some money, you just automatically the royalties go. So it will have to have sort of a component of like actual like hard tech that does the information retrieval and kind of like fingerprinting, as well as the kind of the usage, the ecosystem, the cultural norms of like, all right, you consume from this place and put back into the place. And you could cheat, right? You could download the thing and take it off band, put it on a flash drive and take it to another computer, something like that, right? Like you could do it, but it's just like, I think if you make it easy enough, if you make that the easy path and people understand that like, dude, I'm not cheating some big corporation if I cheat and like screw these people over. I'm screwing like, you know, this dude that I follow on and I love his music, and like that's just like that's not what I'm trying to do. Like if I get $10 and I used 3 of his samples, here's like, you know, 30 cents or whatever it is.
I love that.
Bro, have you ever heard of Arpeggi Labs?
Arpeggi Labs. That sounds familiar, but I don't think so.
They're creating the first ever on-chain music platform, the first ever on-chain digital audio workstation.
Nice.
And so what it is a blockchain music creation platform that provides tools for, you know, the next generation of, you know, creators to compose, collaborate, and sell their music on chain. And what's interesting is, you know, you can compose and mint your song as like a full on-chain NFT, allowing creators to take full advantage of blockchain technology by allowing, you know, if people like use your song, you know, or if they use your sample, like the blockchain notices when people are sampling and doing things like that and can disseminate it like that. So if you have never heard of that, that might be a project that like it's in beta phase right now. So yeah, man, it's really interesting. I've been looking at it. I've been deep into like crypto Twitter and music NFT Twitter.
Yeah.
And just looking at these, like at the genesis of a lot of these platforms, and you know, your expertise in machine learning, man, I think it could be really powerful. You could give a lot of really great expertise to some of these projects. And
yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've talked to a few I don't know, Web3 crypto startups, and I've a few friends kind of who are in them, and like I said, it's super early, but the thing that excites me about it is not necessarily the technology or like even the communities themselves, is that the incentives are aligned. Like I am a huge proponent of like if you can get the incentives of a lot of people aligned, such that like everyone's winning or like everyone's better off than some previous system. People are geniuses. People are hardworking. People are passionate. They will get it done. They will figure out what needs to be built. They will build it. They will adopt it. They will use it. It's just incentive alignment has always been kind of something that's been shaped by like people already in charge, and they have an incentive to not align the incentives or like not align things too widely from how they have it at the moment. And so I think like with this stuff, like it sounds like it's really difficult. It sounds like, dude, you're never going to get something like what we were talking about a couple minutes ago around this kind of like BeatStars, but like on chain and everything is integrated. It sounds like it's not going to happen. And then you're like, all it really needs for it to succeed is like two big like corporations that have millions of dollars in licensing budget to just adopt this and be like, all right, we're gonna pick our like beats and our commercial jingles and stuff from this platform, and now everybody will rush over, and that like all the artists will rush over, not all, but like a lot of them will come, a lot of beat makers, a lot of sample makers. And so there's just so much money today that is spent in really kind of inefficient ways, and a lot of middlemen that are getting a lot of money, that I think if you get even like a percent, like, or a tenth of a percent of that money in these much more efficient economies that where the incentives of like everyone up and down the value chain is aligned, like, yeah, I think it's definitely kind of a way of the future.
I'm loving what like all this new tech can bring, because a lot of the times you'll hear when it's AI, like when we first think of AI, it's of course doom and gloom, Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger's
Of
gonna come
course.
kill me. We get the Matrix, we get Ex Machina, like they're all running around, robots are gonna kill us. But I think it's just fascinating. By coincidence, like last night I rewatched the Imitation Game,
Nice.
which for those, it's a great movie. It's like filmed really well. You get Benedict Cumberbatch as Alan Turing, and so Alan Turing of the Turing Test, the Imitation Game, is I guess one of the fathers of AI as we think about it as today. But great movie, go watch it. Basically, invented somewhat of an early computer to crack like the Nazis' machine, their code. He was a code breaker, and how it was set up was that it would change the like system. The machine was fundamentally simple, but the system would reset every day with a new kind of configuration, new settings. And the amount of possibilities was, I think it was 150 million or
Something
million.
crazy.
Basically, like if it, they say this in the film, that if you were able to solve one every second, like test out one solution, put in the input that they send, and then be able to decode it. If you were able to test one every second, it would take you 200 million years. So humans can't solve this. We had all these humans coming in there trying to figure it out. And Turing had written all these papers. His thing was on these theoretical sides, and was like, well, why can't a machine do this? Like, why can't we teach a machine to think? If this machine is creating this problem, let's use a machine to solve this problem. It's a great movie, really tragic ending. Go
Yeah.
watch it. But it was just a funny coincidence. Where it was like, oh my God, we're about to speak with an AI machine learning expert. And here it is, less than 100 years ago, of it being put to very good use
Oh yeah.
in World War II. So I'm just wondering, with that long transition, is there any other AI or machine learning based things that really excites you that's on the horizon, on how it can be applied, either things you're working on or just the industry at large? Like, in a good way, what is this going to do to change our lives?
So I had an easy answer, but then you said in a good way. And
We'll
I
hear
am
the
not
bad way
sure.
too. Let's
I
let's
mean,
hear the
I
bad.
want to hear it in the bad way too, man.
Yeah, so I think this, I would say, depending on who you talk to, you will get different answers on kind of what is the next frontier, or what is the next kind of wave of innovation. I think I'm biased because I started working on this earlier this year, but I would say probably you're going to hear more and more about foundation models, which are these extremely. So going back to kind of the progression that I was giving on like AI was a thing, and then machine learning became a thing 20 years ago as a means of like trying to as an approach to AI, if you will. And then one of the newest kind of approaches is just making the neural networks extremely large. extremely, extremely large with certain architectures, with certain sort of ways of training. But it turns out if you make them extremely large, whereby you're kind of approaching the size of the network is approaching or surpassing the size of sort of the human brain in terms of number of neurons. They can do some really crazy things, some really, really impressive things, and things that you didn't expect them to be able to do. And for example, like it's funny that you watched that the Alan Turing movie yesterday, because yesterday some of my colleagues in a different part of Google AI published a paper and a blog post that you can go check out on a model called Palm, which has the ability to kind of understand jokes at a superhuman level, meaning
Big fan of
understand
the
and explain.
podcast. A future listener. That's
Exactly, a future listener. And so, I mean, that was so. If you read Turing's sort of writing, that he talks a lot about different ways of where the imitation game can be used as a means of assessing an agent's intelligence, right? Like if you're just typing text back and forth to an agent, can you figure out if it's a human or a robot, if it or a machine? If it can fool you for like 2-3 hours, then who are you to say it's not intelligent, right? So that was kind of the basis of it, and here we are, kind of with this new frontier or new wave of models, foundation models. We are seeing that emergent behavior is coming to life, right? Like these models are, at least from through a textual medium, they are mimicking certain parts of our behavior, and that unlocks so many like really cool applications and potential opportunities. But also, like I'm a very risk averse person. I look at it, I'm like, that's really
spooky.
risky, because humans are really dangerous, right? Like we spend years training humans not to fuck shit up, and yet most people go through their like first 20 years, if not the rest of their life, just messing things up. And what will such a curriculum look like for a machine that's that powerful? We don't know. So it's I think that will definitely, well, not definitely, but in my opinion, will be one of the next frontiers that will be very exciting, very powerful, and we'll have to be very careful with it.
It's so interesting because we can't even get along with each other.
We're trying to bring something up.
Yeah.
Now we're bringing something with its own cognitive capabilities into existence. And it's like, if we haven't ourselves become wise enough to coexist peacefully, how could we even expect to coexist with something that isn't even human and could possibly be even more powerful? So there's a lot of like philosophical stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we still have a lot of growing to do as a species. I hope that we approach this with a level of humility.
Well said.
That's deserving of something of this magnitude. But absolutely. I mean, based off the short conversation with you, Pedram, like I'm a huge fan of you. Thank you for coming on the show. We need to bring you back ASAP. I hope you'll accept another invitation. There's a lot that we didn't get to that I want to get to. Yeah, man. Thank you for your time.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Of course. Thank you guys. Yeah, thank you guys for inviting me. This has been an excellent hour. So yeah, hope to get to do it again.
Before we let you go though, man, we want to shine a light on like what you're doing. Like, is there something a project that you want to get some eyes on, or where can people follow you? Drop a couple of things for us, man.
Yeah, for sure. So I a lot of my music is on Spotify, Pedram, Pedram, all lowercase, and on Instagram and TikTok, I like post a lot of improvs and sort of half-finished things at Petty Jams, PEDDYJAMZ. And I have an EP coming out in a few months. I've been saying a few months for a few months, but I'm saying a few months.
Yeah.
So yeah, watch out for that.
Hey, let us know when it drops and we'll bump it, bro.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys.
Of course.
Thanks again for coming on. And everyone, get your machine learning bots to go listen and
Yeah, we'll have to
get
next
going.
time.
Cool.
All right. Thanks again, Pedram.